show, we wanted to do a Spidey-focused rendition of Rapid Fire. And so we have a few questions from the Beyond Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/podcastbeyond. Alan Coffey asks, do you get to deliver pizza in the game?
No.
A lot of pizza places.
Yes,
there are a lot of pizza places. We are going to try and do a rundown on them on Up at Noon this week.
Good.
I love New York. I love pizza. I love New York City pizza. This game doesn't have a lot of that. Brendan Graber, who's writing the wiki for us, got a single photo of pizza in a garbage can, which is not really a great representation. I don't know, people that don't live in New York.
Yeah, well, I did want to ask very quickly.
Lactose intolerant.
Brian, we're both from New York and lived there for a while. What did you think of this representation of New York?
I think it really nailed a lot of the small details that I really miss about the city. It absolutely made me miss New York more than I always say. I've said on a bunch of things before that New York to me is like the one that got away.
Yeah.
I did a whole podcast about New York City with Jared Petty and just how much I love it there. It's a very special place to me. And I think that this, and again, we're going to do a rundown Up at Noon about our favorite little New York City details, but there's like Timberland boots. There's like the weird black squirrels you see in Central Park where you're like, what's wrong with them? There's like weird liquor stores that look like they're out of business, but they're still open.
Yeah.
There's bodegas with like 6 items in them that you're like, this is a drug front. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. I don't know how much of that is accidental and how much of it is just there, but it really feels like a really actual living, breathing representation in New York. I can definitely tell that they went there and they took some pictures and some videos.
Yeah, they definitely like glossed over a few intersections or changed things around for story purposes and everything. And obviously NYU is now ESU, so like some of my old college buildings are not there in any way.
Yeah, I tried to find my old apartment and which was on 27th and 2nd or 3rd, and it was it just basically jumped from 25th to 28th. And there's just like a building there. But I'm glad that there's still a grid. It's kind of it's I would say it's a more accurate representation of New York City than Watch Dogs 2 is of San Francisco, having lived in both cities. Watch Dogs 2 felt like a fever dream. It jumped straight from like Hayes Valley to Golden Gate Park. It skipped right over Haight Street and other key areas. Yeah. And this game I think is a lot more straightforward in terms of representing Manhattan.
Like you could possibly find your house.
I found my apartment building.
Yeah, which is
really
cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
And so if you go to Harlem, the neighborhood looks a little different than it does in Midtown. Like it's not just like copy paste all over the city. So I think they're pretty smart about that.
Philip Steen asks, how does this rank among the best superhero games you guys have played?
It's up there. This is like a possibly my favorite. I mean, this is in the running for Game of the Year contender. Like this is a really, really good game. I'm trying to think of superhero games I've really loved. I think one of my favorites up until this was Lego Marvel Superheroes, which was kind of this wonderful, like the perfect storm of obviously it was Lego, so it's very, very cutesy and silly. That was also in a kind of sandboxy New York. But as far as like actually managing to hit a lot of the beats that I love about the comics, they killed it. They nailed it.
I think it's either my favorite since the first Arkham or it's above that. I think because I'm not really crazy about the tail end of Arkham Asylum, and I think Arkham City does a lot of really awesome things, but kind of falls here and there. And I think that Arkham Knight is a straight up like mediocre game.
Yeah, I think the Arkham games, having read like a ton of Batman stuff, obviously different things about Batman attract different kinds of people. I think that the Arkham series feels much more like Batman adapted into sort of video gamey tropes. Everything is made of carbon fiber. Everything is more violent, grittier. When you punch somebody, it sounds like a shotgun went off. Spider-Man has that a pinch, but it still manages to have a lot of kind of the levity and charm of the comics.
Yep.
I mean, going from just across, the myriad different versions he's been in print, it's just it's really good.
Yeah, there's surprisingly not a ton of comic book games. I mean, I'm thinking like Saints Row 2 or 3, which is the one that feels very superhero-y.
Yeah,
that's 4.
Yeah,
I was thinking stuff based on actual.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think it doesn't eclipse Arkham Asylum or City for me, but it is 100% up there within, I would assume, like my top 5 superhero games easily. Yeah. But also there aren't that many others that stick out like those games did.
Spider-Man Cartoon Maker for Windows 3.1.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's a huge one.
Yep. Spider-Man 3.
I sat next to Greg Miller for years at IGN when he played every Spider-Man game that came out during the kind of dark ages.
That every year it was like Web of Shadows.
Yeah. And I was texting him about this game the other day, sort of just like it's cool to talk to somebody who is so excited about this, who was there for the Dark Ages, covering these games when they were pretty mediocre. So,
I mean, I'm glad that Marvel is kind of whipping their games offering into shape. It sounds like they're actually really committing to being like, hey, we've got a beloved catalog of characters. We've nailed it on the movie front. For whatever reason, we can't figure out games, and it looks like this is starting to kind of turn things around. I have high hopes for whatever Square and Crystal Dynamics are doing for Avengers Project. Amidst all of those, like they made a really good Spider-Man game for PS2, and then for whatever reason they kind of got off the beaten path and forgot what they were doing. And obviously some of that is limitations, some of that was Activision being like, this has got to come out this fall. But yeah, like, I mean, that Deadpool game that High Noon Studios put out could have been really, really awesome, but it still had that feeling of like, this is a licensed game. And this is a game that does not feel like it is a licensed game. It feels like a proper tried and true game.
Yeah, I think it sets a really great benchmark for what Marvel games can do from here. And I think also sort of, like says, hey, going forward, these other games that we put out have to live up to this. I think
it's like with the movies. What Max just said is like, you can go and watch a Marvel movie even if you're not a comic book fan. I will admit I am not the hugest comic book fan, but like that doesn't stop you from enjoying this game. Like anybody can play this game and have fun.
Yeah. There is so much more to talk about when it comes to Spider-Man on PS4. We will have a lot more discussion on this show and IGN in general, so be sure to stick around for all of that. That was just a small slice of our conversation. For the full episode of Beyond, you can head to beyond.ign.com every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific for brand new episodes of the show, as well as youtube.com/IGN Beyond every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific for new episodes of the show. Thank you so much for watching.